As Ray Kitchen, a 56-year-old trucker from Fort Nelson, BC, delivered his final load of explosives to seismic crews working on the Alaska Highway, he decided to take a break at Liard River Hot Springs Provincial Park with his 11-year-old daughter Jolene and her friend Sarah. The park is located in the Boreal Forest and is a popular tourist spot featuring campsites, breathtaking scenery, as well as a famous children's playground. It was August 14th of 1997, and Kitchen was looking forward to a day of relaxation where he could sit back and watch his girls swim. After having just spent mere minutes in the water, the peaceful ambience was suddenly shattered by ear-piercing screams coming from the Hanging Gardens, another one of the many famous attractions at the park. Kitchen sprang into action upon hearing this and ran along a slick boardwalk, climbing wooden stairs to the viewing platform, which is when he was met with a horrific scene. A massive black bear was mauling a young boy and a motionless woman, both covered in blood from deep wounds. What happens next would go down as one of the most tragic, yet heroic true tales in North American history. This is a true story of the Liard Springs tragedy of 1997. After a long and exhausting journey from Paris, Texas, Patti McConnell and her two children, Kelly and Kristin, were relieved to arrive at Liard River Park. Eager to unwind, they quickly changed into their swimsuits and made their way to the lower pool. The water was warm and inviting, and they enjoyed a relaxing soak before deciding to venture into the more secluded upper pool. However, Kristin would quickly grow restless, which is when she would dash back to the lower pool to play with some newfound friends. Concerned for her safety, McConnell and Kelly would follow Kristin. As they approached the Hanging Gardens, Kelly suggested a better vantage point, and so the pair climbed a flight of steps to a viewing platform. Momentarily lost in the beauty of the myriad of exotic plants that the park hosted, the pair are unaware of the rustling bushes beside the boardwalk. As McConnell descended the wet steps, her attention was quickly drawn to something else. She locked eyes with a big adult male black bear sitting in the shrubbery, chewing on a dogwood branch. Stunned, McConnell whispered urgently to her son, "Kelly, bear."
Yeah, right.
Kelly, however, thought she was joking and turned around only to come face to face with a towering black bear. Realizing the potential danger, he cautioned his mother not to make any sudden movements. Kelly then slowly begins moving closer to McConnell, which is when the bear suddenly snorted and lunged through the railing onto the boardwalk, prompting Kelly to yell in a panic, "Mom, run!" McConnell would then sprint back up the stairs to the viewing platform, but the bear was fast approaching. And just moments later, Kelly watched in horror as the bear grabbed his mother in between its mighty jaws. Despite his scrawny frame, Kelly then courageously attacked the bear and kicked it in the face, shouting at it to get off his mother in the process. The relentless ursine grunted and returned to McConnell, not paying any attention to Kelly, who cleverly took advantage of this by searching for a weapon. Fueled by rage and surging with adrenaline, Kelly then grabbed a sawed-off tree limb and began repeatedly swinging it at the bear's head, while simultaneously screaming for help at the top of his lungs. Just as he'd catch a glimpse of his mother's blood on the bear's teeth, a now further enraged Kelly would then manage to land a powerful strike directly on the bear's nose, causing it to growl and lash out at him with its powerful paws, leaving deep claw marks on his neck and shoulders. The bear then turned its full attention to Kelly, overpowering him with its weight and biting down on his waist, which is when it proceeded to swing him around in the air as if he were a toy. It was at this point that Kelly felt himself losing consciousness as the bear flung him onto the deck with force, leaving him in a ball beside his motionless mother. As a now severely injured Kelly desperately attempts to crawl towards Patti, the determined bear would attack again and tear at Kelly's flesh with its teeth, causing him to scream in pain as he simultaneously controlled his urge to vomit from the rancid stench of its breath. Kelly at this point knew that death was near, which is when he would close his eyes and wait for the inevitable. This is when aforementioned Ray Kitchen arrives at the scene. He would react to the situation quickly and picked up a fallen tree branch and proceeded to pound it against the railing, shouting, "Hey, get off!" When the bear ignored him, Kitchen would then grab a larger branch and shove it into the animal's stomach, hoping to push it away from Kelly. The bear would then divert its full attention towards Kitchen and charged at him, knocking him through the railing and into the bushes. Kitchen protected himself from the bear's claws by scrambling on his knees to a nearby tree and covering his head with his hands. he would then scream for help. Hearing the commotion, 71-year-old Frank Hedingham rushed towards the scene. Ingrid Bailey, a wilderness firefighter and paramedic from Felton, California, and her friend Brad Westervelt were already on the boardwalk ahead of him. They had heard the cries of "Help," "Bear," and "Get a gun," and so were headed towards the parking lot along with the other panicked people. Bailey, along with Westervelt and Hedingham, were accustomed to encountering bears, and so didn't let fear stop them as they grabbed sticks and chunks of wood and headed towards the scene. As they arrived at the viewing platform, they would see 2 bloodied bodies lying on the deck. Below them, the bear had Kitchen in its grip, with its jaws locked around his arm and shoulder, and its claws tearing into his flesh. Bailey then hurled chunks of wood at the bear, screaming for it to release Kitchen, but her efforts too were in vain. Hedingham and Westervelt would see a thick tree trunk nearby and attempt to use it as a battering ram, but even their combined efforts couldn't drive the persistent bear away. Bailey realized that they needed a gun and would then begin wondering where the park ranger was. Westervelt would decide to go find the ranger while Hedingham, though exhausted and with a history of heart attacks, which of course didn't do him any favors given the stressful circumstances, would continue to fight the bear. It's at this point that suddenly, the bear would shift its position and begin attacking Kitchen once again, and land its final blow, tossing him into the air violently, killing him instantly. As this was happening, Bailey tended to McConnell, checking for a pulse and attempting to resuscitate her, despite knowing she was likely not coming back. Meanwhile, Hedingham went to Kelly, who had just regained consciousness and was still trying to reach his mother. As they were tending to Kelly, the massive black bear would then once again appear on the deck near them. An enraged Hedingham then kicks the bear with his hiking boots, causing it to stumble back. However, instead of fleeing, the animal moved towards the boardwalk, where other people were still present. Kelly then begged Hedingham to help his mother, to which Hedingham replied to him not to move and to breathe slowly, assuring him that they were doing everything that they could. Hedingham, who had knowledge of first aid, used his handkerchief from his jacket to clean up the worst of Kelly's wounds. Just as Bailey realized that they needed towels to act as compresses and more helping hands to assist with CPR, a group of several men would rush up the stairs just in the nick of time, with one having a towel as well as knowledge of CPR. Hedingham and the man with the towel would then help to bind Kelly's wounds, while another man assisted Bailey in compressing McConnell's chest as she attempted mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. By this time, the bear had already left, but Bailey still couldn't help but wonder where the ranger was. Hedingham then exclaimed that they needed to get the victims to the hospital, which is when he would leave to get some help. A man named Vandervelden, who was a research assistant from the University of Calgary, had been soaking in the upper pool. He'd rushed down to the boardwalk with some other bathers to see what was happening upon being alerted by all the commotion. It was at this point that someone shouts, "A bear's coming! Run for your lives!" As everyone fled, Vandervelden slipped and tumbled into the bushes, where the bear pounced on him and began to viciously maul him. Despite kicking and pulling at the animal's nose and ears, the bear would just not relent, and Vanderveld felt excruciating pain as its claws and teeth tore into his flesh, leaving deep wounds. Hedingham finally arrives at the park ranger's office, where he'd recount the situation to Ranger Dave Webb, who quickly retrieved 2 rifles, a Winchester 30-30 and a Remington 223 from his motorhome. Accompanied by a young man named Dwayne Eggbroten, who he'd asked if he knew how to use a gun, the trio then rushed to the scene. Eggbroten arrived first and heard moans from below the boardwalk where the bear had dragged Vandervelden and was now feeding on him. Taking aim at the back of the bear's neck, Eggbroten would fire a perfect shot, causing the bear to collapse, and although he knew that the shot was fatal, he regardless of this fired 2 more shots to ensure its demise. Back on the viewing platform, Bailey was still attending to McConnell and her son when she'd heard the shots. Her pent-up tension and anger finally released as she cried out, "Shoot it again." It was at this point that the tragedy at Liard River Hot Springs had finally come to an end. Although Patti McConnell died that afternoon, Kelly McConnell and Ari Vandervelden would survive thanks to the heroic acts of Ray Kitchen, Ingrid Bailey, Frank Hedingham, and the others. They were flown to a hospital and would eventually recover from their severe injuries. More than 500 mourners attended the honoring of Ray Kitchen's bravery in Fort Nelson on August 22, 1997. In a letter to Kitchen's wife, U.S. President Bill Clinton wrote, "The heroism and selflessness that your husband displayed coming to the aid of Patti and Kelly McConnell is an example of all that is noble and good in human nature. Ray Kitchen would posthumously receive the Star of Courage from Canada in September of 1998, and Frank Kettingham, Kelly McConnell, Ingrid Bailey, and Brad Westervelt were also awarded decorations for their display of bravery. If this episode piqued your interest, then our previous episode about a man whose life was tragically taken by a massive saltwater crocodile is sure to do the same. You can find it on the end screen of this video.